Thank you, everybody who came today for the October meeting of the Library Marketing Book Club. This month, we read The Speed of Trust by Stephen M.R. Covey. So Stephen Covey's son, Stephen Covey of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People course, and the son, the famed one in the story about cleaning up the yard. So I don't know if you had a chance to read this one, if anybody here had a chance to read it, but let's just start off by, anybody have any thoughts about this book? What did you think?
I read like the only version that was available on audio because I only do audio, and it was on Hoopla as like a live in LA thing that I don't think was actually the book, but
yeah.
Okay. But it got at some of his theses, I think. So disclaimer, I'm running off a different version.
That's okay. No, that's fine. Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. I think he's good at delivering the same message every time. And any of your impressions from what you heard, Victoria, just in general?
Yeah, well, the book had me thinking a lot about trust in general. And I think it was one of the other books that we read in the club here. I don't think I attended the meeting for it, but the Story Brand, or I think he mentions trust in the Edelman Trust Barometer. I could be thinking of the one by Jay instead, because I read both those like really fast back to back. But I don't know, it has me thinking a lot about the importance of trust in institutions and how much more, I feel like even since this book came out, that's become more and more of a commodity. A couple weeks ago, I was reading, or I think the last issue of Wired, or maybe 2 issues ago, they had an article in Wired about political candidates and PAC groups using influencers, because influencers have established trust with their followers. And so now there's like a whole system where these organizations can find influencers to hire, essentially, to get people to build brand loyalty, or loyalty behind these political ideologies by using these trusted figures. And they pointed out a big issue with that is that, you know, FCC says that you have to state when you are paid, and oftentimes that influencers through this organization do not do that. But it has me thinking about what, I don't know what the future of society is when trust is so low. I think the Edelman Trust Barometer in 2022 said 6 out of 10 people operate on distrust as the standard now. So
yeah, I pulled that up. I haven't read the whole report, but I did pull up the trust barometer, and this is that trust top 10. And yeah, 6 in 10 distrust something until they see evidence it's trustworthy. Trust has been so eroded, because there's a lot of media outlets out there. There's a lot of ways for people to talk about things and spout opinions. And like you said, that's a big issue with somebody who is an influencer being paid by somebody with a particular opinion to share that opinion. Has anybody done any influencer marketing in any of your libraries or anywhere besides libraries? Has anybody done anything like that? Hey, man. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were coming off.
I haven't done influencer marketing, but as a graphic designer, I was actually looking at trust a little differently. Last week there was an Adobe Max conference, and they were showing the power of AI on images. So, you know, you can change someone's outfit completely. You can change their background where the lighting is set perfectly, and you can't tell the difference. And that's just one aspect within that application. I've actually seen it on the internet done even, I mean, if you've seen it where you throw in a couple of words and then it brings up an image for you. So the power of AI just giving us these falsified messages in many different ways. Again, I'm with Victoria. I was like, I just don't know where it's going to go and how people are going to think of just anything. People and their Instagram and businesses with their influencers, like, where's the truth going to be behind all of these?
Yeah, that's very definitely, that has been a hot item of late, is the AI give me an image that is this and this and this thing, and it coming up with some really terrible funny result, or something that actually is representative, but maybe not in the way that that a human might think of editing and doing that. And yeah, with the deep fakes too, that is something that is definitely making people skeptical about what they see on a screen. And since we see so much on screens all the time, it definitely puts trust as a very very valuable commodity, and something that that it is important to look at. So yeah, we haven't done any influencer marketing either. We've talked about doing some, but not paid. There was another library, and I may have talked about this in last month's meeting, but there was another library who did some pretty cool stuff with some of their local influencers. But what they did was, I mean, I guess they didn't pay them, they gave them stuff to use to promote, but they made these cool pink big coffee mugs that had the name of whatever the campaign was on them. I just can't remember what it was right now, but so they gave it to some of the local like bookstagrammers, and that's what and that they showed that off in some of their Instagram pictures, and it was for a reading promotion at the library. It was like a throwback to the Pizza Hut. When you read a book, you get free pizza. So it was cool. It was really well done, and I think that level is probably a great, a good one for the library, because it takes on something local. It's not, looking for as much of a political message. It is a very promotional message, but yeah, with promotions and going out to, or with influencers and that being utilized by politicians, Victoria, that is pretty wild. And yeah, Amanda, the things you can do on a screen, especially when you see all the things that come out in every one of these Adobe conferences, is pretty incredible. So it makes it easier to do things that that trust may be a little questionable on. So yeah, but it's and those are definitely some pretty interesting things that they talked about in the book. Yeah, but I think I'm still showing. So yeah, the trust barometer. I look forward to reading this. I do hear a lot about this every year, but when it talks about government being mistrusted, and I don't know if your organizations are. Oh, thanks for posting that, Victoria, for that Wired article. If your organizations are government organizations, I don't know, are libraries. No, they're not NGOs, because unless you're in, like, is there CLC, Beth? Is that an NGO? I'm not sure.
I'm actually new to the organization as of a month ago.
Not,
so yeah. I'm
but it's not a government, right? It's not.
No, it's not. No, right. It is not. Nope.
So yeah, so you may be in pretty good shape, maybe in a little better shape than a library is government, but yeah, it's pretty interesting. So hey Nancy, not to put you on the spot, if you had a chance to read the book, we were just talking about some of the first impressions of the book. If you have anything to share, that would be great. Just go on in and you can unmute and share your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm so sorry I'm late.
Oh, it's okay.
I only got a chance to start it, but I do really intend to finish it, because some trust organizations arose fairly quickly in my job with other employees of the county, not the library system. So, yeah, basically, the public information officer wasn't happy about some of the stuff I was doing,
Yikes.
like sharing her own posts on Facebook and stuff. It's very weird, but I think it really is a trust issue. You know, there's some weird way they felt threatened, and
Yeah.
so we're working through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, and it is. It is. You know, it's really interesting to see it in this book, and see the different kind of things that they talk about as examples of trust and distrust, and yeah, especially the, you know, the kind of it was an interesting message, and I didn't think about it quite as much as the title, but it definitely, having mistrust definitely does slow things down. So, you know, it causes a lot more of checking and rechecking and review and those kind of things. What are the cultures of some of your organizations that you might have some of those kind of issues? Or Nancy, oh, go ahead, Amanda. Yeah.
I was thinking of when someone in leadership might be indecisive about something and they go back and forth and back and forth. And I think that can be really hard for someone underneath you. I've also had the experience where, someone at the top would lose their cool and the whole room would just like melt down. And so I think leadership is a big part of, and it's really unfortunate that you need to be cool, calm, and collective all of the time. So you can have trust, keep trust, and keep everyone else below you, trusting you and trusting the workflow. It can be so easily broken. And then you have to rebuild it. Like you said, it's really slow to go, did they know what they were doing? Or are they okay? Are we good to move forward? And things like that.
Yeah, and they had some great examples in there of the indecisiveness, and I don't know if anybody got that far, but where there was one point where somebody who in the room when they were all discussing it would kind of not commit to any opinion and follow up, and not commit to any opinion at all, and then just kind of then jump on the bandwagon whenever a decision was made and act like that was their position all along. And I think we all see that sometimes, and that's that. But then made a commitment in a smaller conversation, and then back in the room, kind of backed up on it. So yeah, it can be really frustrating when those kind of things happen, when there's things that are shared differently in one discussion, and then when somebody's true feelings or different feelings are expressed in another situation. And we've had that, I've encountered that in organizations, in this organization, where people have said one thing at one time, and then eventually kind of made the confession, I guess, that no, they actually did feel that way all along. They actually did feel that this was a good thing or a good decision to make, and it's too bad that it couldn't have happened up front, because it really would have made things move a lot faster. And you have to spend a lot of time and energy to do this. And I find that so we are a library that is part of the city of Jacksonville, so we do have to follow a lot of government guidelines, and a lot of the checks and balances and processes and procedures can make it really difficult to move fast and to do things, to try things, to test things. There's always a good deal of hesitation, and that can be really frustrating. So it was interesting to see in this book, and I do want to kind of take the advice. So if you haven't had a chance to finish it or haven't had a chance to get too far in it, what I got from it, and I'd like to hear anybody else's thoughts about it, is that the way to repair these trust relationships is really just to do things that yourself that prove you to be more trustworthy, and that's going to help build up the trust with others. Does anybody have any thoughts about that? Because I think it's a very interesting concept that it makes sense, but it's just seems kind of interesting, that idea of.
Yeah, that was the advice I got from a friend with management experience when I was describing this buzzsaw I unexpectedly ran into, was that, basically I should just keep behaving in a collaborative fashion. And eventually, hopefully, this person will learn to trust me a little bit. And yeah, I mean, my last workplace was unusually collaborative for a newsroom.
Yeah.
And so I was sort of like, oh man, I forgot what it's like to work in a place where people are turfish and territorial. But then I sort of realized the library itself is very collaborative. Everybody is very generous about sharing, and they don't care if you are sort of out of what is, quote, your lane. So I think, I feel good about that. Like my main workplace that I spend most of my time working in is fine. It's just working in the wider county context sometimes is a issue.
Yeah, it's true, Nancy. I think we, I definitely feel that way too. I mean, I feel like there is a lot of, it makes it interesting in the library because there is a lot of, well, it's about access. It's about everybody getting equal access to everything that we have. And, and then there's some practice and policies. If, we recently went fine free. So to me, that's at least partially a signal of a change in the tide to a culture of trust, after having so many years been not fine free. And certainly, we weren't the pioneers, but, to me, it does signal a little bit of like, oh, well, maybe there is some heightened trust now that we do that. And we actually just launched laptop borrowing and hotspot borrowing. And there were a few questions here and there about how are you going to get them back and what's going to happen and how are people going to pay for it. But we're trying to keep up the message of, well, it's important that people use it. And if things happen that they don't come back, we'll manage that. And we can brick the machines when they go out if somebody, and I don't know how many of you all have this too, but we can brick the machines if they're out for too long and we can't recover them. But, but still, that's not really the message we're trying to send. And so we've had a couple times on social media where it's gotten a lot of attention, but then we get a few, hey, what are you going to do about if they get stolen or if they never come back? And we don't have a ton of them, but that's the risk that we're willing to take so that people can have some access. And I know there's some larger libraries, some similarly sized systems, but with larger programs that are also taking that same attitude with this particular thing. It's, hey, these are a service for the community, and some libraries are like, we're not even thinking about how do we get them back. We're just expecting these to go out in the community and be something people use. So does anybody have any programs like that, or has gone fine free or anything similar that you've seen that has been maybe a shift towards some different trust of the consumer, of the customers or patrons that you have?
We've been fine free for a couple of years, which is great. Also, I worked here in this particular library in Key West earlier, just as a library assistant. From 2009 to 2014, and it has changed quite a bit since in those 7 years. It feels much more welcoming. There used to be this almost hostile relationship with the regular computer users who would come in and, you'd be kicking the guy off the computer after they'd been playing Candy Crush for 2 hours or whatever. And it was just a nightmare. And it's a lot more welcoming in a lot of ways. And we aren't loaning laptops out of the library, but that is the computer access within the library now is laptops, so people can be where they are. They just shut down after 2 hours,
Yeah.
It just feels like a much more pleasant place to be for everyone.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's nice. That's refreshing that people are more positive and more welcoming and all across the board. So yeah, I wonder when that changed. Does anybody have any thoughts about that? Was this a COVID change that, certainly COVID, I think, changed a lot of things.
I think it was COVID and some management changes and some changes in the technology too. It just makes it easier when you can hand a person the laptop and be like, go wherever you want, do whatever you want. I'm not going to be standing over your shoulder and staring at what you're doing and counting down the minutes. So
that's definitely sounds like a much more comfortable environment for people to be in if they are enjoying using the service that they have and not feeling like somebody's just watching over out. And I think that this move to fine free is with a lot of libraries over the years has definitely changed things. I think there's still people that don't believe we still get, I'm sure if you are too, we still get every once in a while the well, what's the punishment, and people not realizing that it never really did that much to have fines punitively. It just ended up, well, you all know, it just ended up making people not have access to libraries anymore because they ran up some fines and fees on there. So but yeah, I think I think that was pretty good. And even that one, there was a part in the book, and there was a pretty neat quote in the book that I thought, where they talked about how do you treat, and again, getting back to a lot of the thing in the book was about how you treat your coworkers and your employees and your staff and your colleagues, and companies treating. There was a part in there that I think was about work from home and how that had been a big contention, but some companies have had that part of their culture forever. And companies that haven't have been kind of categorized as treating the 97% of people that they can't trust, or that they can trust, like the 3% of people that they can't. So, and I think, to me, I see that a lot in a lot of library policies, and it makes it sometimes difficult to communicate because, there's often a lot of need or a lot of want by some to, well, make sure you explain all the exceptions and all of the parts of the policy that are important. And I mean, we've been trying really hard to take a lot of those things out of it. I mean, they're still available on the website. We still refer to things that are important parts of policies, but we try to keep the details out of there so that people, don't feel like that we're treating them like we don't trust them with whatever the practices are. People are going to game the system, and that's going to happen. But I thought that was pretty interesting. So, what are other thoughts about the book, or just about trust in general? What other things, either this conversation or has the book, had the book making you all think about?
I'll add, as far as I appreciate all the fine free stuff. I love saying that. I've been at like 3 different library systems over the last 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Because I worked part-time at 2 before I came into my current position. And they were very different libraries. So I feel like I've got a sort of strange sense of everything that's happening in the library world right now, from those various contexts. But one of the libraries I worked for was a rural library that it was very, very slow moving as far as any progress, and it has had sort of a toxic work environment where there was no trust from the director. And the situation there has changed since I left, so I feel like I could talk openly about that now. But that was a very difficult environment to work in. And then at the same time, the other library I worked for was a suburban environment where I was trusted with everything all the time. Like if I had any project, I'd be like, yeah, go ahead and do it, which was crazy different to be working at those two environments at once. And so it was weird because at the suburban library, I was running our home delivery service, and I'd kind of taken it over from, I was in an outreach specialist position there. So I'd taken it over from a previous library while I was a librarian. And I had updated the system so that it was more universally accessible. And, you know, we didn't require proof of you can't drive to the library, and just trusting people in that way. And that brought a lot more interest in the program. We also put a form online and stuff because started putting out more marketing materials for it, but we were able to triple the number of people that we had enrolled in that program just by changing some of those things in the first year. And then of course, when I started talking with my other library system about that, and they'd asked me to put together a proposal, and I proposed all the same things that I did at the other library, and they were like, well, why don't we require proof of this? And why don't we have you know, why are we trusting them with media, and shouldn't we just limit it to books, and all these sorts of other questions that come up? And it's like I feel like the future of libraries really is to trust our patrons more, because trust is such a commodity nowadays, and it's so valuable. And I think we are in libraries in a unique position to be able to help people identify trustworthy information in an age where it's increasingly difficult to do. So
Yeah.
As long as people trust us, I think that's
Right.
the trick.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's hard not to think about trust and libraries without thinking of, you know, are the libraries some of the last trusted institutions as far as what media is accurate and what is good, what's fake and what's not fake. And yeah, we've tried that a little bit, but it's an interesting position that we're in.
Yeah, well, I think you guys in Florida are experiencing, like, we've got similar hotbed issues here in Michigan.
Yeah.
And in my personal time, I've been involved in my place of residence, the city of residence I work in, that I live in. We've had a lot of book banning issues, and that's a huge point of interest in the upcoming November elections. It'll be really interesting to see how that stuff plays out then. Yeah, but one of the things that I guess that the reason that most concerns me is because it represents a denigration of trust in public libraries. And
Yes.
I can tell people, as someone currently pursuing an MLIS who's just completed my collection development class, I can tell them like how libraries often develop selection criteria and the processes for that, but they just don't trust me, even though I've got all these and resources and everything, and I can show them that it doesn't help the conversation. And if you don't trust me to begin with, then there's no, I don't know. I was hoping, I guess, for a little bit more pointers in this book on how to build trust with people who just like don't trust you to begin with, and who maybe are your patrons or.
Yeah. I see what you're saying, and I was thinking that also, that, you know, going into this, that might be kind of where, you know, where some of this was. And, you know, as we talked a little bit earlier about, it's kind of the main message seems to be, you know, act trustworthy, and people will trust you back, which is good. And it sounds like a great positive message and a good way to get there. But as far as speed goes, it seems like that might be a slow path. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe, you know, maybe putting some time and energy into that, and showing some of that stuff could help. You know, but there's other, and there are definitely some other books and some other things that I think have some other ideas about trust and how to build it. And we are facing the book banning, and I think I don't know, and nobody's here from Missouri, right? So Amanda, you're not in Missouri, are you?
No, I'm New York.
Okay. Where in New York are you, Amanda?
Central New York.
Oh, okay.
Fairfax.
Wow. Oh, wow. Oh, okay, awesome. Yes, I went to school in Geneseo and a lot of friends from Syracuse. Yeah, awesome. Um, but I don't, has anybody seen, so in Missouri, there is a bill, um, I don't know where it is in the process, but there's a bill that says that any state funded library, if the bill passed, would have to put in controls so that parents couldn't see, hey, Angela, so that parents would be the ones to make decisions for children on any um, sexually related content. And it's kind of scary that that bill is out there, and we're worried in Florida and Victoria. I don't know if you all may be worried up there in Michigan too, but that if that passes in Missouri, that it's going to start to hit other states. So yeah, it's kind of scary. It's one thing now where most of this talk of book banning and book control of those kind of things is more in the schools, which is terrible, but it's terrible, but it's not at the public library yet. But if this bill goes through, that's not going to be great. And it's definitely another issue of trust. It's an issue of people trusting parents, trusting children to be able to make the decision at whatever age they need to be, trusting parents to make the right decisions and be part of their children's, decisions and however that fits in. But yeah, I mean that's definitely a trust issue that we're all facing now. That could be pretty bad. Victoria?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've had a lot of one-on-one conversations. I try to do more one-on-one because I do feel like that does help build the trust better in, face-to-face stuff. In again on my personal time in my place of residence. And I get a lot of I don't know, a lot of the conversations I'm like, okay, so you're concerned about your children, our school system has an opt-out system and all of this, and they're like, oh no, my children are fine. And I'm like, okay. So I guess it's tough to know where, I guess it's all politics. It's just all.
Mike,
Yes.
one of the thoughts that I was thinking about is that we're taking trust away from the people who are building, this children's collection we're not limiting them. And we've seen that is the problem. The way that I look at it as a parent is that I've been using, I don't know what they're called, the warnings for movies. Like this is a mature thing for video games like that. And I think books don't have that right now. So when my child will say, this person got clunked in the head and, blacked out in his graphic novel, it's surprising. So I would say that if there was a notification like, hey, there's violence in here, then it would be a different thing because you don't know what's happening within the pages, right? And you don't know until your kid mentions something. And I think we have this idea that parents must constantly review all of these things prior to their children. And, parents don't have time for that. A lot of people don't have time for that. I think librarians who pick content don't have time for that. They'll look at reviews, and I'm not sure because I'm not a librarian how far you guys go. But if there was just like a sticker from the publisher that had some sort of warning, then I would take that like I would when I subject my child to a movie or a video game, and I say, this might be violent, or should we look at this together as a family, and things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Victoria,
Trust your
did you have-
publisher.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
Yeah,
in my
publisher,
community,
yeah.
that's something that people have really been pushing for is a rating system, but they want that to be determined by the schools and a
Yeah.
board of parents, and I keep telling people like the MSRP rating system, like all of the rating systems that we currently use that they're pointing towards are private rating systems that were established by movie ratings were established by the film industry, I guess following after I did a little rabbit hole research down this, but it seemed like a lot of communities in the early 1900s had like their own censorship of movies. So, a local board might say, oh, we don't find this scene appropriate, so we're going to cut it out of the movie altogether. And after some period of that, people were just getting really bad reviews of these movies because they were missing whole important plot points. And so the movie industry got together and they were like, we have to do something about this so that people stop cutting our movies out. And they just established a rating system. And then I mean, that rating system itself is subjective because,
Sure.
yeah, and I've mentioned to people like PG-13 didn't exist until, what was it, 86? So
Yeah.
growing up, my parents often relied on like, oh, this movie's PG, should be fine. And if it was pre
Yeah, early 80s
86, it was
PGs were pretty risky.
yeah. So I mean, that's all good stuff that I've been trying to, I don't know, I feel like I've been doing a lot of reconnaissance in my private life to know what might be coming at me in my public library work eventually.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think that's very interesting. And yeah, I mean, and Amanda, I mean, even given like the stuff that Victoria's talking about, maybe the rating system, I mean, it's better than banning and taking things out. I'm not saying that it's the right solution, of course, but if the option is, withdraw all these books for fear of somebody getting them in the wrong hands, or, and again, but I think, here's something that we have the opportunity to do, perhaps even in library marketing. And I know Angela, a company like Novelist, certainly provides a lot of insight about what's in the content of books, and I think, has a great opportunity to be somebody who helps build trust between the library and the customers, and helps people know kind of what's in books. So I know again with like the readers advisory, and that's something that certainly the libraries can do, and us as marketing people can help to provide that kind of guidance. Something that I still want to, and I think we're getting closer to doing it here, that I'd still like to do is provide more resources for our customers to do their own readers advisory. So like Angela, that thing that Novelist has, that's like that little book that I forget what it's called, but it's kind of like the shortcuts to how to do readers advisory. I love that, and I think that's something that all libraries should be teaching customers how to better understand what the content is and what everything else. So yeah, Amanda.
Yeah, we had really pushed the content. What was it called? I just lost my head. Where parents can go on this website and figure out the recommendations. What's that website called? Oh, I'm sorry.
You mean Novelist, or do you mean?
No, for movies.
Oh, you're talking like Rotten Tomatoes or
Common Sense Media.
Common Sense Media. Oh, okay, sure.
And we pushed it out for a blog. We pushed it out on the social media, but they're getting to a point where they want to pay parents to log in, and so information will soon be behind bars.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of stuff goes behind paywalls. It's definitely a thing of theirs, but yeah, it's a big challenge, and yeah, with all these challenges right now to books and that, it's it's an interesting crisis of trust and people. How do people make the best decisions, and yeah, it definitely affects us, I think, as marketers, and not just at the system level, but down even at the branch level. I know we have issues with people that don't agree with displays that we put on, and what should we do to those? Should we how should we help to give people guidance and advice on displays so that we can build a better community. And sometimes it does feel like there's how can we trust, what I'm saying is I feel like sometimes we have a hard time even within the organization kind of trusting what each other are doing, but sometimes it's not as much because of what a staff member maybe who puts a display together is doing, but it's more, if you look at it deeper, you find out that it's more on the level of, well, we're looking at the loudest customer reaction, and that's kind of where we're basing what we should be trusting. So I don't know, it's an interesting thing as far as the concept of trust. Victoria?
Yeah, that just brought back a memory for me of one of my previous positions where we were doing a blog series, I think it was, about LGBTQ media,
Mhm.
and someone on social media completely misunderstood what the blog series was, and rather than respond to those concerns, we had opted to remove that and cease the post, but that ultimately destroyed the trust with one of our staff members who had been working towards that. So it's like, if you listen to the loudest community members, you do also risk hurting the trust that you have with some of your staff as well. Or I guess sometimes it might be vice versa, but
Yeah, it's a tough position to kind of balance the public relations aspects of things, and what the decisions were that went into things. And yeah, social media can definitely be a very challenging space to engage in those kind of discussions. So yeah, I mean, again, maybe that's part of the advice of the book, is to just, like you said, just stay trustworthy in whatever communications and whatever methods you can. And if you're not prepared to be, as transparent as you need to be, or, back somebody up for a decision, then probably not a good thing to start to engage in any way. So I don't know. This is a sensitive concept. A lot of what I was thinking about with this was the kind of trust internally, through, because we do hear that sometimes, is that we have staff that don't always see the things that we do as the things that they would expect us to do. And I think sometimes that does breed a little bit of distrust of, if they come to us, one of our biggest things was, if they come to us with, hey, I want this giant poster, and we tell them, well, posters are expensive, and what are you trying to achieve? And let's see what we can do, and let's see if we can do something that's going to achieve results, but makes it something that that maybe is a little different than you might have envisioned, but let's see if we can get there. And sometimes we are accused of, well, you all just want to do whatever the things you want to do, so you're trying to move people into whatever that is. And it becomes difficult. And that's where I think there were some things in this book that talked about, keeping commitments and showing results, and looking for some of those kind of key things, like those, especially showing results, that can tell people that, no, this, that we're not just saying this because it's easier for us, or it's something that we want to do. We're saying this because, look at the reactions that we get here. And, just because things are visible to everybody doesn't always make it the best decision of how to act. A lot of times, I don't know if your boards do this, but our board, always talks about, oh, why didn't I see this on Facebook? I don't know. We put it there, or we didn't, and it didn't come across your feed because you're not the type of person that that has that that kind of thing coming through your feed. So that to me is one thing that I feel like we, as marketers, and I'd say as library marketers, we encounter a lot. Yeah. I think one of the other cool statements in the book that I really liked was about commitments. And I will say that I have hard times sometimes with commitments. I like sometimes to make people happy, which is a mistake, because I will try and commit to something that is ahead of a deadline. And then if it's just impractical, then that's very disappointing. But he had the one thing in there, he said, and it wasn't from him, but he had it from somebody else. It was, when you make a commitment, you build hope, but when you keep a commitment, you build trust. So I think that's something that I would like to work on, is, how can I make realistic commitments, honor those commitments, and see what kind of effect that has, see what kind of thing comes back. Any thoughts about that, or any other thoughts about anything else? Angela, I know you joined us late. If you have anything to share, not to put you on the spot, we're in a little small group here.
Now, I confess I did not get my hands on a copy of this book. However,
All right.
so funny that I came in when y'all were talking about First Amendment challenges, because that's the focus of my presentation at LMCC next week. And I just want to say that a big part of that presentation is setting up the evidence that the public does trust us implicitly. The ALA has done surveys, and then every library did a survey. That's a organization that helps. Yeah, they did one in August, so that's the latest one. And again, like something like 70% or so of the public trusts librarians to make decisions about books for their children. So I think we just have to talk about that more with our audiences. And then part of that presentation, I actually interviewed the director of the ALA Office of Intellectual Freedom, and her so she's kind of like a co-presenter on video with me, and her advice is very much promote your policies. So if you've got a collection development policy, if you have a policy about what books go in a book display, talk about that on social media, in your emails, and those kinds of things, and help to reinforce the trust that the public already has for you. Just like, here's how we make our decisions. It's not arbitrary. It's not political. It's not just a bunch of people like deciding, oh, you know, these are my views, so everybody should have these views. You know, we all know, like, there is a process for buying books and putting them in your collection. So yeah. And the weirdest, not the weirdest, the most, well, it was a lovely comment we got from one of our customers. So Novelist has a product called Core Collections that helps libraries decide what books to buy and weed. And one of our customers said that they actually used the fact that they used Core Collections like as an expert reference in a First Amendment challenge, and they won.
Wow.
And the woman, at the very end, you're not going to want to come to my presentation now because I've totally spoiled the whole thing. But at the end of it, I talk about Martha Hickson, who won the Lemony Snicket Award because she faced this huge First Amendment challenge at her library. She's a school librarian in New Jersey, and she won the award. She won the challenge, and she said she used Novelist to help her. So like the tools that we have, including your own collection development policy, those things can be really helpful. So
I think I definitely that's where kind of the same thing with like exposing the reader's advisory process, and like you said, exposing the collection development process is super important. And this even helped me in starting to build more trust with our marketing process, was just exposing more of how we make those decisions and what do we do. And I totally agree. I think it'd be great if if there's ways to expose how does a collection get built. And there's certainly some kind of easy take off the top things that I think a lot of people before I came to libraries I didn't know that you just, I don't know, before I came to libraries, maybe you all didn't, but I just did assume that libraries were like an ever-growing repository of every book that they ever had, and until a book got finally turned to dust, it was still on the shelf. I think a lot of people don't know that, and people get mad about, why don't you have this or why don't you have that? This book came out 10 years ago. And the more that I think that and that was a lesson in the book, is that the more you can share with people what the processes are, and the more you can share people how decisions are made, that it's definitely something that helps to build trust. But the number one thing was act trustworthy, and people will do. And I think this is our time where, as libraries and as marketers, we're the ones that are going to be carrying the message to show how are we acting in a trustworthy way, how are we acting in a way that we're working with the community. So we're actually just starting employee generated content on our blog, and which to us means that less of our blog content, or well, we'll start to get there, is going to be created and drafted by marketers. It's going to be more created and drafted by librarians, or library staff. So now I think that's going to give us a lot of opportunity to start to show people what's going on in the library and what kind of are the decisions made. And it's not that we didn't get feedback and input from others, but we were the ones writing it. So now we're going to have staff writing it, and some of them already are planning to write things about how do you select a book, and how do you find the next thing that you're going to read. So very interesting. It's an interesting experiment.
Yeah, that's a great. Make sure you send those to me.
Yeah, when we get those, I will make sure to share those, because I'm excited about that. We just have a few minutes left. Any other last thoughts about the book before we go? I'll just be quiet for 30 seconds and see if anybody jumps in. If that's fine. So yeah, well, thank you all so much for coming. Thanks for participating in the discussion. This was a really, I think it's a really interesting topic. It definitely goes in a lot of areas. If you haven't had a chance to read the book, it's good. Victoria, I would say, if you haven't had a chance to read the book, was that Hoopla version that you read that was kind of like a live presentation? Would you recommend that to other people to listen to?
Yeah, it had some interesting little anecdotes and stuff. I don't think it was close to the full thing, and it was definitely presented to like a audience of leaders of businesses. But yeah,
it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't tried it, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, and there's some good takeaways from the book, and I did. If you're on the email list, you got some things that had some good kind of little summaries and things like that. So it's great. Beth, yeah, it's very good. Very glad that you're here today. And yeah, we'll see you at is who's going to LMC? Well, Angela, I know you'll be at LMCC. Beth, you'll be there. Nancy, did you get into the industry early enough that you're going to be up there?
Not this year.
Okay.
But I hope to definitely attend next time.
That's great. And Victoria, are you going to be there? I think
yep, I'll be there.
Okay. Amanda, are you going to be there?
It actually conflicts with Nyla, so I'm going to go to the New York.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I saw there are some conflicts. So yeah, well, it's cool. Well, we look forward to seeing everybody there. Before we go, we always do this. So let's see, we pick somebody to win a book. So so Beth, pick a number between 1 and 5.
3.
3 is Victoria. So Victoria, you win a copy of next month's book, which is This is Marketing by Seth Rogen. So Seth Rogen. Wouldn't that be great if it was Seth Rogen? It's Seth Godin, not the actor. Seth
Read
Rogen,
on audio by Seth Rogen.
Seth Rogen should read it. That would be great. Okay, Seth Godin. Looking forward to this. It should be a very cool Seth Rogen's memoir. Yes, we'll have to read that. Maybe that could be a mid-month book that we can read sometime. But yeah, so it should be a really cool book. If you've ever read any of his stuff, he's got some wonderful ideas, or follow his newsletter. Brilliant marketing mind. Have not asked yet if he would join us, but I'm going to, because I ask everybody, and you never know. So thanks so much, everybody, and I will send out a little survey if you have a chance to fill it out. I would really appreciate it. And yeah, we those of us who are in the club, we will be meeting next week if you are available on Wednesday night at LMCC. And it's looking like Punchbowl Social might be the way to go. That Harry and Izzy's is nice. It looks like it might be a little pricey. So I think Punchbowl Social will have a room for about 15 people. Which is about how many we have, so we'll see. But we'll have a couple of bowling lanes, it looks like, and so it should be, yeah, right. So it should be pretty fun.
I can hardly contain myself. Like seriously.
It's a good deal. It should be a lot of fun. So, yep. So very cool. And thank you all so much.
Thank you,
and I
Chris.
look forward to seeing you in person.
Take care.
And those
See
of
you
you not
soon.
there, we'll see you soon. We'll see you soon online.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.